Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about movable chord shapes. People commonly refer to these as bar chords because commonly they're played by using a bar, that means barring one finger across all the strings. But I just think of it as movable chord shapes because you're going to learn many chord shapes in the future that also move that don't necessarily require barring across multiple strings. So whether you call it movable or chord shapes or bar chords, it's relatively the same thing. I think of it as just movable shapes. Commonly, the ones that are played are chord shapes that are related to your open E major chord, and your open A major chord. So I've kind of developed a bar chord workout or movable chord shape workout based on these two chords. And I'm going to quickly and briefly explain it and then give you some options for how you can alter the quality of those two chords. So first, let's start with the E chord. I'm using fingers 1, 2, 3. That's index, middle, and ring, right? If I start with my basic E chord and I move everything up one fret, I play everything else open, that turns it into a kind of an F chord. But if I move everything up 2 frets from there, that turns it into a kind of a G chord. Back to F, back to E. Those chords are actually from a famous classical guitar piece called Malagueña. Now, let's see if I can turn it into the movable chord shape. Instead of fingers 1, 2, 3, index, middle, ring, I'm going to use fingers 2, 3, 4. That's middle, ring, pinky. I can do the exact same shape. Now my first finger is free. Exact same chords in the exact same positions. That still gives me E, F, and G, but with some sustaining open strings around them. With this free index finger, I can now do something different. For this F chord, how about I start by making it a mini bar? I just take this first finger, this index finger, and I bar it across the first fret on the first 2 strings, the high E and B string. And how about I forget the low E, the 6th string for now. I just play it as a 5-note chord. So that's getting into a bar chord with this movable shape. What about the final step? I could do the same thing, but then extend my first finger all the way across all the strings. That now gives me a full bar chord for E, F, G, and back. Some subtle variations of this is that maybe you could focus on the lower sounding 4 strings and basically just use your fingertip. Another option is maybe you just focus on the 4 highest sounding strings and you switch these fingers around. The 4th finger, the pinky, is not involved anymore. You're barring with the index finger, then adding the 2nd and 3rd finger on the strings below that. That's another option. Okay, so that's one way to work on just the movable shape itself. Let's focus on the movable A shape next. Again, this is typically played with the first, 2nd, and 3rd fingers, index, middle, ring, like that. There's a few different variations, but let's just start with this one that I see a lot, which is they're all in a row. That's A to B flat to C and back by moving up 1 fret and then 3 frets. 1 fret, 2 more frets from there, and then back. And again, open A for the bass note, open high E above. What if I do the exact same thing I did before? I replace those first 3 fingers with the last 3 fingers and do the exact same thing. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. That's our movable A chord shape. Now I can do something similar and add some extra notes around it. If I move this up to B flat, what if I start by just adding my index finger to the high E, the first string, the first fret? So now I have first fret, nothing on the 2nd fret. These are all on the 3rd. So that's A, B flat, C. What if I could just add the bass note with my index finger tip. Or I could do a full bar. This is a little bit uncomfortable in the beginning, but it's commonly used in classical music, not a lot of pop and rock. I use all 3 fingers, and then I bar from the 5th to the 1st string. I get the bass note and the note above. In rock music, a more common way to do this is to flatten the 3rd finger, the ring finger, across those 3 notes. Some people will actually flatten their 1st finger if they're just playing A as an open A chord. But if you're moving it around, it's common to flatten this 3rd finger, then add the index finger for the bass note, etc. You can move it anywhere you want at that point. But then you have to basically skip or mute the high 1st string, the high E. Okay, so that's our basic E movable shapes and A movable shapes. So now let's get into some details about how we can change the chord quality. So for this, I'm going to use the 3rd position. That's 1st finger at the 3rd fret, so you can see a little bit more what's going on so we don't have open strings. So if I take this E shape with my last 3 fingers, and I move it up to a G chord, that's barring at the 3rd fret with my index finger. That's G major. If I simply lift my 2nd finger and I continue to bar, now it's G minor. So I have G major, G minor, just that easy. I can also get some basic 7th chord shapes. I can't get some of the more complex ones, but I can get some basic ones by just moving around the G note in the middle. So this is G. If I continue to bar, but I lift my 4th finger, it gives me G7. G, G7. Lift the 2nd finger, G minor. Lift the 2nd and 4th, that's G minor 7. A less common one in like pop and rock and blues, etc., would be like G major 7. And to do that with this basic bar chord shape, I'm going to have to change the fingers around. So I'm going to move my 4th finger here to the 5th string. I'm going to replace my 2nd finger with my 3rd, so then I can move my 2nd finger in the middle. That gives me the notes G, D, F sharp, B, D, G on top, like that. So these are both on the 4th fret. This is on the 5th. So that's a little bit less common in pop and rock, but common enough that it's very useful. One that's even less common would be doing this, but then lifting the finger on the 3rd. So you make it a minor major 7 chord. You have a minor 3rd, but a major 7th. Okay, these are all possible to play here with the bar because our bar gives us like the root and the 5th. To play some more complex voicings, we'd have to find a way to alter that 5th and maybe add extensions above the root. So that's going to come later in some other video when I just talk about what's called drop 2 and drop 3 voicings. Just you're taking all 4 fingers and giving them all separate notes and then moving them around. But let's save that for later. For the A shape, again, I'm going to move this to the 3rd fret. That would make it, instead of an A chord, that makes it a C chord. Okay, so if I want to make this, I want to change the chord quality here. This is C. If I just do this A minor shape, but with my last 3 fingers, I move it up to C. That's the difference. So C major, I'm just flattening there to give it like the rock chord shape. C minor right there. I can do the same thing to change the C note in the middle and make it C, C minor, C major 7, C minor 7, and then C minor major 7. So let's check that out. C. If I just take that note down 1 fret, so now I'm adding my 2nd finger on in the middle, that's 3rd string, 4th fret there, gives me C major 7. If I just lift that, so now I'm barring across that string, that gives me C7. I can make this C minor with this separate shape now, and then move that 1 note in the middle down again. If I want to make it C minor 7, I just lift the 4th finger. If I wanted to make it C minor major 7, I'd have to switch these around, right? Like that. So again, I can have C, C minor, I can have C major 7, and and C7. I can have C minor, major 7, and then C minor 7 like that. Cool. So again, that might be a lot, but just to recap, we're taking the chords E and A, and we did a little workout where we took our last 3 fingers and then added a bar so that we can move these shapes around. And I took you through some qualities of like major, minor, 7, minor 7, and minor, major 7. And all those shapes are going to be, from sort of like most common to least common in pop, rock, and blues music, etc. Once we get into some more complex shapes in the future, I'll do a different video on that for using all 4 fingers in different places and you're not really barring anymore. Cool. So that was the shapes. Next, we'll do some kind of musical example that's including movable chord shapes, but also the riff that we talked about earlier. Thanks for checking it out. See you next time. Bye.